We'll just wait a few moments and let everyone join the webinar. You can see people rolling in on this lovely Sunday morning. Okay. Kia ora tātou. I'm Lou Vicente from Organic Aotearoa, and today is the 5th day of Organic Week Aotearoa, our national celebration of organic food, farming and people. Over the course of this week, we've had over 60 events happening around the country, from in-person events to online. So we're really happy that you're here today to join us in this celebration of organic regenerative living. Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning. Please let us know in the chat where you're calling in from this morning, because it's interesting to see where you all are. And this is our third webinar in a series of Organic Living Labs webinars. And today we're joined by Robyn Guyton. Now, Robyn lives in Riverton on her 30-year-old abundant food forest that she created with her husband, Robert. Now, Robyn is a truly inspirational woman, a community organiser and a local food advocate. And Robyn is here this morning to talk about how we can all improve access to affordable organic food in your neighbourhood through organic cooperative buying, and hopefully inspire you to give it a go. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. We'll be online for 1 hour today. We are recording the session, so we will send this out next week with some information about Robyn and what she does. And we encourage you to drop any questions into the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to do a Q&A with Robyn. But before we begin, I would like to thank all of our Organic Week sponsors, in particular our Platinum and our Gold sponsors, Woolworths and Ceres Organics. Without their support, Organic Week and these free events just couldn't happen. So Robyn, shall we begin? So Robyn, you started the Organic Co-op in Riverton 33 years ago. Can you tell us a bit about how you began and what motivated you?
Yes, so we came to Riverton, my husband and I, with a baby, a cot and a car, and we had nothing really. My husband was from Nelson, and he wanted to go back and live in Nelson, but my family, when we were in Otago, I had a baby, a toddler, so I was keen to stay. So when the Southland House, as it was called then, was going, we had 12 people in Southland, 12 couples, and we formed the Southland branch of Southland House, but they were all over Southland, very spread out. And we had a conference there, and Perry Spiller was the president of Southland House at the time, and he was speaking in Invercargill to see if we could get some more people. And I very cheekily rang him up and asked, would he come and speak in Riverton? And he said, he is free the next night. Is there a group there? And I said, yes. And so I advertised in the local school newsletter, got half a dozen friends to come to be a group, and put notices around the town, kind of thing. So in Invercargill, 26 people came, which is double our interested numbers. We're really happy with that. And then the following night they came out to Riverton, and I only had 12 chairs out, but 57 people came out of a small town of about 1,000. And so from the outside, it looked like there was no one like us, no people with like-minded, but they were there. Half of them were old people, my age, over 60, who had been gardening and seed saving all their lives. And then the other half were young families like us. Land was very cheap in Riverton, and we wanted to live the good life. And so we suddenly had a group. I don't know if that would ever happen if I hadn't done that meeting and did this. This was like a start off everything that happened. And so within a year, we approached the local supermarket if they would sell organic food from biograins and this kind of thing. I didn't want it at the time in a wee small town of 1,000 people to start another business without, just seeing if I could work in with the locals first. And so he did, and he set it up, but the price was almost double the price we could get wholesale. And he said, no one was buying it. He's happy for me as the local small supermarket, for us to start a co-op. So we did. And we started off with 12 young mums with their children wanting to get a case of oranges from Kerry from David Skinner and biograins grains and a few things like this. And we had a very lovely little Central Otago orchard that was a mixed orchard, everything from cherries, plums, nashi, pears, apples, and they used to come once a fortnight. And so I started the tree off. I rang 6 people, and they rang 4 people each, and we collated how many we needed of each thing, and then they'd come, and we built a garage, but we never used it as a garage because by the time the garage was built, it was a food co-op, and one of our members was married to a sawmiller, so he made some shelves for us, and those shelves are just slats, they're not solid, and so they've gone with us to 2 other bases, so we just pick them up and take them with us, and they're still in our new co-op now. And so in those days it was cash or check, and we used the organic group's bank account to do it. And it was very lovely because as soon as we had a co-op and we had the organic group, we had a community, and that community has kept going for all these years. And I think having the links, not just the gardening, but also the food, attracted different people as well and expanded our group. So some people weren't gardeners, but they wanted to buy organic food, and some people were gardeners didn't buy the food, but there's lots of commonality there. And when we'd been going in our garage for about 5 years, our 3rd child was born, Holly, and I felt that our place was becoming quite busy. We had trucks coming up our street. There's only you have to, there's no exit. You have to turn around at the top, kind of thing. And I thought some might complain about us doing this, and also we were doing it without any rules or anything, just doing it quietly. And also I felt I wanted to share the fun of being the person who's in the co-op to meet people. I felt really nice if more people could do that. So we rented a building that was not being used for $1,000 a year. I asked if no one wanted to rent it. And we started a environment centre that hosted the organic group and a co-op and an estuary care group. And soon we had a seed savers there as well, and a kids conservation club. And I think it was really lovely for us to have a physical base. It meant that people who weren't in Riverton could drive past and pop in and see what we're doing. And it was very encouraging. A lot of people came in, and ever since we started having a physical presence in the town, people would come in and they would decide they'd come and live nearby, or they want to start something similar. So different than a group that no one met, was a group that had a physical presence in the town. And so that was the early days. And we found at the start there was a really nice core group of people who'd help. But as people got more switched on and wanted more people to come, we started getting people to come from further afield, and then people who were too busy to help, they wanted to buy it. And eventually realised that the same small group of people were working for free. All these people never had time to help. And people couldn't help also complained. So for example, if we only got 20 kilos of apricots to share with all of us, this person would come a bit of a distance and say they've travelled to get there, 5 k's of apricots that are not happy with just 2. And so we decided to start a food co-op in Otago. So we helped someone start one up there. And it lasted for 2 or 3 years, but it wasn't as good because it's quite a big population. And I think it was the person who hosted it would let them come after the first 2 days. So if you forgot to get your order, you had to wait till a whole week to get it. And by that time, the produce wasn't of good quality. So it sort of takes a lot of tolerance and a lot of working together for the good of all. Yeah. And so, so we shifted to a present place, and we initially had a thing that if you couldn't help, you could pay some money, like $200, and that was your share, and you got 10% off your produce as a result. Like people who volunteered did. But the people who had money to do that would buy a whole lot of stuff, and they'd get their $200 discount in their first month. And I was like, that didn't really work. And so a present system we've had for many years now is that you get 2% off per hour that you work, and that's added up each month up to 15% is the maximum. So if you do 2 hours a week, you get 15% off your food, and that's pretty close to cost price. Yeah. And if you walk off the street and buy it, you pay that extra, and it works really well. So we usually have enough volunteers. It's always nice to have new ones. We have I would have to go up and down. You have too many, they don't have enough, then it just goes up in waves. But it's really lovely to have that. And we don't want to have a shopkeeper, because as soon as we have one person selling, we've got to do their wage, and then it means also we haven't got the group. We haven't got all the people coming in and the volunteers meet each other. It's a very supportive social community. And
So
so
community is a big part of what you do, right? So would you say, apart from community, what are the benefits of running or being part of a cooperative group? Why should others do it?
yeah, so it's the socializing. Also economically, you get it much way cheaper than otherwise, and food resilience. If you've got a system where you can get food, it's not just the big supermarket chains. That's good, and I think it's also good for the earth. I think if you're getting things in bulk and sharing them rather than couriers going all over every house in the street, and just go to one place in this town and that kind of thing.
What were the logistics of setting up the co-op in the early days? Like, how did you organize yourselves?
So we had a phone tree for the orders and exercise book, graphic exercise book, and we'd write people's orders in and add them up. And so we had some scales and the shelf we're going to talk about, just some of those, the baker scales, around ones, were quite inexpensive, so we'd hang things on them. And one person did the banking, and we'd have a roster for bagging up. So people come along and sort the orders out. And it was very low cost to set up in those days. And now, of course, it's a lot easier with internet and Excel spreadsheets, and that kind of thing would be really useful. We didn't have in those days. And it's a very much honesty thing, trust. And so you want to make sure people who come in and join the trust know that it's a voluntary run thing, and it's for everyone's benefit, and to be kind, and it's not very often that a volunteer gets growled at complained about something, but most people appreciate the volunteer effort. But you can get some people who expect you to be just like a shop and should just exactly like this, and the oranges have got spots on them or whatever.
How do you deal with that? What's your approach to those kind of complaints?
So if anything, everyone complains that somebody me's pushed out to deal with it. I just say that's how organic food's like. It tastes really beautiful, and that we volunteer and appreciate that and things, and you'll find the people who really the Food Co-op is now a not-for-profit shop run by volunteers in the corner of the Riverton Environment Centre, and so the people who come in usually are so praiseworthy, like 100 to 1. Means people come, oh, what an amazing shop you've got here, and all this stuff, and the volunteers stand really proud, and they don't say they just volunteer, they pretend it's their shop, so they have that nice experience. And so we don't get many complainers nowadays.
That's good. So when you first started, what kind of food products were being shared back then, and how did you source them?
They were very limited back then. I actually met Dave Skinner at the Soil and Health conference when we first started, and I said, oh, what do you do? And he grows oranges. Oh, I would love some for a co-op. And he said, oh, it's too expensive. Freight is $1 a kilo. And I said, what price are they to buy? And they're probably $1 as well. And I said, we're paying $3.99 in the shop. So it's just sort of like that. And the Soil and Health magazine, the Organic New Zealand magazine, was good because people advertised in the magazines. So you could say, there's, Fajoa's here that got up with the snail groves, and there was, New Zealand Biograins, of course, and some people would find out about us and contact us as well.
Great.
We had the policy to be certified organic if possible, but you can't. It's unrealistic to have at 100% because they really limit what you can have, and so we just make sure people know that it's spray-free or homegrown organic or certified organic, and what branding it is of organics. And it's a good education thing for people to say, what is a symbol, or how do you know it's organic, or this kind of thing. So I think it's good for education to see what the symbols mean. Yeah.
I think 33 years, it's absolutely amazing. I think you absolutely need a medal for keeping things running for 33 years. For those that have worked in the community sector as community advocates, we all know how hard it can be. Tell us what keeps you going. Like, what is your, like, what motivates you?
I think I'm a busy person. I like to be busy, and I also like to meet people. And my husband loves just to be in the garden, and he's in it. So for me, the Environment Centre and the Food Co-op is like my, a good social time for me, and the friendships. And also, it's lovely when people come in and they might start eating more organic food, or they might start gardening, or they might want to start their own food co-op. And I feel it's like to inspire people to do a similar thing and get the joy out of it that I get. I think that keeps me going. I really love it.
The ripple effect of change.
Yeah,
I wonder
yeah.
how many people of those 33 years you've affected with your ideas and inspiration. That'd be good to know, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? Okay, so now I want to know about any failures or lessons learned, because you can't go 33 years without making some mistakes. So I want to know, like, thinking about your past, what are the big failures or lessons learned, and what would you do differently if you were starting over now?
It's quite a different world now. So when you start now, it's quite different. In those early days, we probably got too big. And I think if I started again, I would have stopped maybe at like 24 people, about that, 24 families. When we got to 60, it became like work. It was too hard for us to bag up 60 people's orders and things. And so we were too inclusive at the start. And I think it would be good to work out what's a good size for your co-op that you're working at and where you are. And, when you get too big, it's only too much work. So you want to keep it enough volunteers and workers with a ratio of who you're looking after. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we also lost some volunteers when we became more like a shop because they were too shy. So, it would have been nice to have kept a little bit of the old co-op going and had a town branch. Sometimes we ordered too much, and our family ate a lot of kiwi fruit some weeks because I was a bit too enthusiastic and think, oh, let's just sell it a bit extra. So when you picked up your order, it was never exactly 20 kilos or 18 kilos. It's always 15 or 12. And sometimes I'd think, oh, we could probably sell another box of oranges. And often we didn't. So I was sometimes too enthusiastic, think everyone wants more of these. Uh, but we managed, because it's not for profit, we've always kept quite evenly. We try and keep it really even, not be too stocked up even now. Because if you stock up too much, you can't pay bills. So it's my biggest thing, is not to be too enthusiastic and get too much.
Just thinking on that note of too much, what would you do with waste if there was too much? Because obviously you can only eat so much. What would you do with the waste?
So in the past, we've had some people who would go away and make jams and chutneys out of it, or soups and things. And so we had some very resourceful people, not so much nowadays, but in those old days we did. Someone would always say, oh, I can turn this into that, and I can make that for Christmas presents for my family or something. So yeah. So and any food waste, of course, is composted.
Yep.
And that kind of thing. But and in our food co-op now, there's very little waste. We buy bulk, and we bag it up in cellophane or paper bags, and there's really only cardboard that most people are happy to take away. So we have a wheelie bin for the environment centre, and it only goes out probably once every 2 months.
Brilliant. That's
So
great.
and we buy bulk, and we're not big enough to be like a bin in thing. So we actually buy bulk and bag it up, and it costs 2 cents for the paper bag or 15 cents for the cellophane one. But that is the bulk price people are getting. And so that makes it easy in a small space like this.
So it makes it more accessible for them and a bit easier for you to manage as well, I suppose, if you haven't got
Yeah.
the big bins. Yeah. So why are there not more Riverton co-ops around New Zealand? What do you think is holding people back? And before you answer, I just want to let everyone know who's out there in the audience that we've put a poll up for you to answer this question yourselves, because we'd love to know, and then it might inform how we can answer your questions later. So if you just pop into the poll, all the answers are confidential. So there is a question in there that asks you, what's holding you back? Is it down to lack of confidence or shyness? Maybe there's no one around to help, or you don't know any like-minded people in your area. Maybe you don't have enough time, or maybe you don't know where to start. So if you could just pop into the poll, everybody, and answer that question. And Robyn, I mean, have you got any ideas on this?
I think there's lots of co-ops have started, and some keep going. Like I remember the Pico in Christchurch, that started as a co-op, and then they turned into a shop, and there's Little Pico in Littleton. So I think there's I think there's lots of ones that we probably don't know about. There's one in Gore for many, many years. I think the Gore one went for 20 years. And they didn't have so much fresh produce, but they had the dry goods. And there's also the series co-ops where people can do a bulk order with series and probably other wholesalers. and it's a risk. You have to carry a bit of a risk. Is it going to work or not? And I had the philosophy about with my friends, like, let's just try it. It might just work. And unfortunately, when I say that, often almost all of them have worked and kept going. And so I think you have to have belief that it's worthwhile, a belief that it's possible. And if everyone knows the Riverton Environment Centre, we've got several other projects that are all thriving. I just think it's that optimism that you need. You have to always think, it's going to get better. It's just a blip,
Yeah, it can be done. If you think it could be done, it can be done. And I think when you have that kind of mentality and attitude, people will gravitate towards you, the right kind of people, right?
And I think you probably don't know all the co-ops that are around New Zealand because there's a lot of regulations about handling food. And I think some people will do it quietly because they don't want to have to pay the $700 to the council, and they're doing it with a good heart and with food safety in mind. And so, so I think you have to ask around. You never know. There might be one already in your town.
Absolutely. Most people are saying so far that they don't know where to start. So this is a great webinar to be on. And what we'll do next week is when the recording goes out, Robyn has some information that we can share about some resources of how to get started. But 39% have also said other. What's the other reason? What's holding you back from starting a co-op? So please drop that into the chat, and maybe we can have a chat about that at the end when we do our Q&A. Thanks, everyone. So Robyn, I'd love you to break it down in a few easy steps and talk about some of the following things. So in terms of starting a co-op, how to find people, what kind of people do you need in your group? So thinking about the different roles and the personalities.
So the best thing to do is just talk to people that you know already and say, do you know anyone who wants to, kind of thing. And posters in towns are good. If you're at a childcare centre, kids going there, or school, school notices are great because you meet other families and things. And it's kind of, once you start to get 2 or 3 people, you've suddenly got a wee team and you can brainstorm together. So you're just on your own, sort of forging forward. And I probably had 6 really keen people who helped me at the start. And then we had 18 keen people, and then 24. So it sort of built up quite quickly. The thing also is maybe just have like a meeting, just get together and say, I think, come have a cup of tea at this cafe. We're talking about the potential, because you might not know the people. There might be a person who's doesn't go to Facebook, or there might be an older person who'd see a sign in a supermarket. So I suggest market in different ways and just get together and see you've got. And so you're probably someone who's good at finances, someone who's a people person, who's really friendly. You need people who aren't either of those, but just want to help behind the scenes. And people just come and just want to, I'll bag up, but I want to serve people. Can I just come and help that way? And so you could actually have, I've got a wee roll thing, and I've got a wee list of all the things we did, so I can share. And so someone dealing with the making things out of the, fruit that's going to go off and that kind of thing. And so you just need a mix of people. You need ideally to have someone who's really positive and keeps everyone enthused, even when it goes, oh, this has gone wrong. And then you probably have someone who can say, actually, this might happen. You might need someone who can spot trouble before it happens. So I think a mix of people is very, really good. I think a finance person is very important to have someone who knows what they're doing with finances, just to make sure everything's like really goes like clockwork. You don't want to have the bill's not being paid, and then you know, kind of thing.
I liked what you said when we chatted the other day, and you talked about the person who pays the bills as the only person that gets paid, right? Everyone else is volunteers, because that is most important. If you're not paying your bills, you can't actually keep things going.
Yeah.
That was really cool. But so thinking about all these different people that we need in the co-op, there's lots of different personalities and roles that need to keep things going. What about how to find different producers or growers or suppliers near you? What advice have you got for people? Where should they look?
So probably the local farmers markets would have people. They often won't. At a farmers market, you bring what you think will sell, but you might have actually more stuff that you like to sell. So farmers markets and the internet. I think just search around. There's lots of wee producers, and we try first to get stuff for our co-op from Southland first, Western Southland and Southland, and then the South Island, and then New Zealand and the world kind of thing. And so we try and localise as much as possible, so everyone have their own little networks. And there might be people who are home gardeners like older people who kids have left home and they still grow enough for, a family of 8, and there's only 2 of them now. So there's lots of resources. Go for a walk in your neighbourhood, look over people's fences and see who the gardeners are. That's a good way. um, and once you get a few, you could also ask, like I would ask a grower, a Nelson, Nelson grows, other different things in your province. And if you're visible on Facebook or those sort of things, maybe someone will approach you and say, hey, I'm here, I'm selling this. So, but you have to have, good food guidelines. We once had a lady who wanted to sell pickled roosters.
What?
Pickled roosters, and I said, no, you have to draw the line. You can't have, got to be, don't take risks. Make sure it's all safe and
Yeah, right. So it's important to look, I mean, obviously local food is fantastic because that's in your local neighborhood. So start looking who's growing what nearby, and maybe make like a little database or a spreadsheet of who is. And then if there's specific things, because you don't always live in an area where you can get oranges, you might look to Nelson or you might look to the North Island or somewhere else to find other things. But like starting a spreadsheet with just what's in your local area would be a great start, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
What about is a location needed? You talked about how when you started, it was in your garage, but obviously it got a bit much, but also you wanted to share the idea of this of getting people over as well. So what kind of do you think it's important for it to be a specific location, and what kind of places work?
I think it's good to have a good location, and I think if I was doing it again in a different town, I would look for a business that's quite quiet, that's aligned a little bit. It might be like in our town, we've got a plumber who just stores plumbing equipment in the shop window, and he could probably push it out a wee bit and give us the quarter of the shop. Or a shop that's could be a cafe that's just starting out and not doing so well yet, and you can say, can we have the co-op in the corner, and then you can come in and people would buy some coffee while they come. So I think it's very hard to pay rent and set off, but if you find somehow somewhere like that to start with, it could be building like a school that's been closed down and it's got as a house, but they've got the dental clinic sort of sitting empty. So I think just find a wee space and have the base is easy for people to find you, and also for the couriers and trucks to bring stuff. So you can't just have one house one week and one the next. That's a bit too fiddly. Yeah.
And that might be a goal. I mean, but we don't want to kind of frighten people off by thinking everyone's got to have an organic shop or an organic co-op in terms of on the high street like you do. I mean, that's obviously 33 years in the making. When I first started with the organic co-op, we got a buy-in group through Series Organics, and that's kind of how it started. And from there, we managed to meet a group of people who had similar interests and wanted to eat more organic, and we started looking for our local suppliers. And we, then from there we can kind of start getting other things. But I mean, for us, because we've kept it small and there's just a few people, it's always just been out of one person's house. But we've shared that over the years, you know what I mean? So it might have been my address for 2 years and somebody else's for another number of years. So it's almost like you don't want to hold the vision of having a shop instantly, because that can be too big an idea and it can be overwhelming. So just starting off small and seeing how it develops and getting your people right. But thinking about just setting up from the basic perspective, like what would you say is the initial setup costs? What kind of things do you need to get going?
So you need some scales. You need someone with a computer. It doesn't have to be a shared one. Someone can just be the computer person. And shelving could just be, crates or something like this. You don't have to have a lot. I think you probably just need people. I think what you really need the most of. So don't need anything flash.
Yeah.
Probably paper bags if you get an account at a packaging and cleaning place, and having a box of bags is quite good. In the old days, we used shopping bags when they were still okay to use.
Plastic ones.
So everyone bought their shopping bags and we just reused them. So back in the day, and depends how you do it. If you have a time people come to pick up the order at the same time, they could have their own bags. So you can just have them in piles on a trestle table or something like that. Trestle tables would be good. Yeah.
And what kind of systems would you suggest people use in terms of getting started? It's like thinking about spreadsheets, or is there anything that you found that helps you?
So there's some really good software out now. So we have one that we use for the Longwood Loop, and it's called Organic Food New Zealand. Open Food Network. So
Open Food Network.
Yeah, that was designed in Australia to be like an online farmers market, but you can use it. They've got it. It's used around the world in about 20 countries, but you can use it just for a small group. You can be a hub on that group, so you could be, you know, the whatever it is, the Te Anau Food Co-op, for example, and you could have things that are available each week put up there. How many kilos of orange you have or whatever it is, and people could actually do it there. And that software is great because it adds it all up for you, and it presents what the bill has to be paid to the grower. So it's a really useful software to explore. And I'm sure there's other ones like that. So I think the days of a maths book and a pencil are over, I think. And they're just one. Yeah, so I think there's probably lots of that, and there's some really cool computer experts around who could design something for you.
Yeah. We're getting quite a few questions around the co-op. So before I go into more of the food resilience questions, I might just go through the chat and ask some of the questions. Someone's asking, what about council regulations? Do you keep it dry goods and fruit and veg, or meat, milk, cheese, eggs, sourdough, etc.?
So a food co-op tends to be a retailer, not someone who produces stuff. So you do have to pay one fee to be a food premises, and you need to have a food control plan. That you've got to have whatever there's pests and washing your hands, and if you're sick, don't have, just the real basic things that is common sense. And so all that's fine. You can do all that stuff. The only thing you have to be really careful with is if your suppliers are preparing things like milk or bread, has to be done in a commercial kitchen. But you can also be a commercial person, a food handling person, do it in your own home. And so you want people to not to get sick from the food you're doing. So I think it's good just to follow the guidelines. MPI, so we MPI level 1, I think. And so we don't prepare food. And as soon as you do prepare food, you've got to go up and you need to pay more and have more tests and things. And so we get visited once every 2 years. And that's it. We pay $4.90 a year, I think. So but that's because we're open to the public. If you were doing it in your garage, just follow MPI rules.
Yeah, right.
And don't ask, just do it. once you have to register. And some things like if you're selling on behalf of someone else, are you really a proper retailer anyway, and that sort of stuff. And so I think as long as you're really sensible and don't start selling raw chicken or something like that, I think
pickled roosters.
Yeah, pickled roosters. Yeah, and I think that's the main thing. Like I know that there's rules about for farmers markets and for school fairs. There's a grey area that they don't really worry about unless there's a complaint. And so make sure all your people are on board to know we're doing this for the good of fair stuff. And you get somebody who complains to the council, then you go, you'll have to register. But I think just common sense. I don't believe every trade has to be regulated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you touched on some good points there, because when you think about growing food or local food resilience in your local area, there's many other things we can do aside from just co-ops, things like, just sharing or crop swapping or community gardening or other various ways of community building. What's your experience with these things? And is there any advice or recommendations you have? Like, for example, I have a neighbor who sometimes I make a sourdough for, and she gives me eggs when my chickens aren't laying. There's other relationships you can develop just in your local neighborhood without doing something like a food co-op.
Oh, totally. It's things like crop swaps some people have. So people bring along just to a local spot, and they bring along all the stuff that they've got excess, so they swap with other people. And there's of course lots of stuff online you can get as well. And we have an online farmers market in Riverton because West and South, it has 4,000 people over 4,000 kilometres. So if we meet in the middle, it's 40 k's for all of us to be to the middle to get there and back. And so there's another opportunity. And I think if you had even a suburb could do this, a suburb could do it, have a open food network platform, and then all meet on Friday afternoon and bring the stuff that people have bought off you and trade. It's all been prepaid and traded. So there's all sorts of people have been creative over the years, and I think in the old days, I think the churches did a lot of that. people would grow more for the poor families and things and share it out. And so sometimes you look back to models that we used in the past that worked really well to share food and work together. And we're trying to encourage farmers to have paddock gardens. That's where they've got the tractor and they've got all the land. And if they just put half an acre into potatoes or beetroot or carrots or parsnips or a mixture, there'll be a lot of food for local people. Southland, we used to grow 80% of our own food, and 10% was from New Zealand and 10% from the world. But now I think there's less than 10% of our food in the shops is from Southland, about 10% from New Zealand, 8% from the world. And so that's one of the big things that I want to reverse. I want to go back to how it should be. It's just crazy. So we've got 500,000 cows in Southland, and all that milk goes to Edendale or a factory to be made to milk powder for China. And until recently, our milk came from Auckland or North Canterbury. And so it's that sort of the local stuff I think is really important. And if you can't grow your own, it's great to encourage people who are good growers to grow some for you.
So didn't Southland used to be big oat growers? Wasn't there lots of people growing oats? Isn't it perfect climate for oats?
Yeah, oats are grain, and we're like a champion, crops like Canterbury had as well. And we had like in Western Southland, we had 3 flour mills, 2 on rivers with water wheels. It was really cool. And the city ones bought them up, and then those city ones are bought by Australian company, and now that Australian company is owned 3/4 by Asian companies. You know what I mean? So just it's a funny thing that humans do is you might have a great little system, great little corner grocer, and you bring your spare eggs to and everything work really well. But as soon as you get someone who thinks they can make money from it, suddenly they get more expensive and someone buys something else out. And I think the whole idea for food co-op is going back to how little villages used to operate. You used to have, in the town, you'd have a butcher, a baker, and someone else would have chickens and all that stuff. You'd have a mix of people and you'd be self-sufficient as a community. So I feel the food co-op was really good like that. If someone can make sourdough bread and they're good at it, they can just sell that. If someone has got chickens, and so you don't have to do everything yourself. You can do it be self-sufficient as a community.
And then I think this is part of it. In the olden days, there used to be like high streets with all of these things in one place, but everyone is so time poor now because everyone has to work a lot longer. And I think that's why we all kind of need to make it easy for ourselves. But there are ways that we can kind of incorporate some of these food co-ops by making it easy. And, also having that social interaction with people by going along and helping with a co-op, going along one day a week, volunteering, and collecting your food at a discounted price at the same time. It's good for everyone. It's good for your community. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your diet. It's good for health. It's good for the environment. So many reasons to start it, really. But you touched on a little bit about your Longwood Loop that you created a few years ago. And I remember chatting to you years ago about the why you did this. And you talked about how in Southland there, and in probably most places in New Zealand, there was only 3 days worth of food in a supermarket. And so particularly when you talk about there's 4,000 people in this, how many square meters did you say? How many square
4,000 square kilometers.
1,000 square kilometers. Like what happens if there's a disaster? Like if we have an earthquake, tell us the scenario about what inspired you to start the Longwood Loop.
So I was concerned about when many years ago, when we were 80% self-sufficient, the early settlers came to Southland and they had small mixed farms, was what they did. They didn't have all the eggs in one basket. And after 2000, we started getting a lot of dairy farmers buying up several farms, and they were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we had the Christchurch earthquakes, and we had the floods, and we've had snow events, and we realised that all their food comes through Christchurch and Dunedin. And so we'd take the crates for the food co-op back to the marketing place where we've got our organic fruit through. And there'll be the big trucks there, massive trucks, like 3 or 4 trucks would come in. And the guy said, this is the food for Otago. They come 6 days a week. And I just was shocked about how much was there, and how when you go to the shop and you see that where the food comes from, it's all around the world. And so we're very vulnerable. And COVID as well, of course. And so in Southland, we'd run out of stuff real fast. And you go there, there'd be no bread, comes through, and newspapers printed in Otago, in Dunedin, it comes down. The milk, as I said, came from North Canterbury or Auckland. It's like what are we thinking, like this? And so that made me think about doing, again, the local food bank again, to honour my early settler families who made all the effort to make us self-sufficient, starting with just no roads, no shops, nothing, and how we could just throw that all away. So and I had someone come into the shop who his grandfather used to get 80% of the price off the tomatoes, the sale price, went down to 70%, and he complained. His father went in his 40 years from 70 to 50. The grandson took over, went from 50 to 30 in 10 years. He walked off. And we had a lady selling tomatoes 40 k's away, bringing them to our co-op, and she was travelling 40 k's to bring it down and 40 k's back for like 3 boxes of tomatoes each week. And so I thought, we need to have an online farmers market. So that's what we do. So that's is where all around Western Southland, it's 165 k's around a Longwood Mountain. And so everyone who's growing stuff puts up their what they've got, how many cabbages or how many dozen eggs they've got. And then in the weekend, then on Monday to Wednesday, the platform opens and people can shop just like at a supermarket, but they can get oyster mushrooms from a Tautau and eggs from Ojai and bread from Oropoki, whatever it is, and they can do all that. And then the van, the system adds it up and the van delivers it around there. So there's no grower or buyer who has to travel more than 5 k's to trade. So the person who's got the market garden doesn't have to go to Invercargill and stand at the farmer's market for 4 hours, because that's the travel and the time. They can just go to the garden and do what they do best, is growing, and just bring it to a depot in their town, kind of thing. And so that's really cool. And then no buyer has to travel either. They just go to their depot and there's the produce all around the loop. And for some little towns, there's no shops left in Southland. There's some very empty towns where there used to be a school and a community, there's nothing. And so we started during COVID and we did it non-contact. But the idea was that I'd like to have a little hub, like the Environment Centre Riverton, in every town. So there's a place people can go there and they can meet and, pick up their food and meet their neighbours and start building community back.
So has that happened? Is there a little hub now in each of these little places, Nightcaps and Otago?
It's getting there. It's getting there
Yeah.
now. Yeah. So we just have to, we've got some of our bases are just like a shelf on someone's fence, that kind of thing, during COVID times. Now we're looking for who wants to be the base, whose garage can we use, or
We've got to start somewhere.
and start like that, because some things aren't perishable. So there could be some supplies like flour and honey and things could be there anytime people to come and pick them up. So yeah, so that's the idea. And then once we're going to have 3 loops. We've got an electric van, and we've got 3 loops. We can use this van for Central Southland, Western Southland, and Northern Southland, and those can trade with each other. So we're hoping Northern Southland will grow rolled oats again, and so we can trade fish with inland Southland. And my vision is in 10 years' time, Southland can grow 8% off its food once again.
Amazing.
Maybe.
So this is just the starting point, right? This Longwood Loop, the southern version, is just the starting point. You're looking at creating these loops, or inspiring or convincing others to start loops in the rest of Southland, so you can all trade with each other.
Yeah, we're just starting that now. So and they'll trade with each other. And what we're finding is that all around New Zealand was the original trading loops before the supermarket started. So there's these circles and they're all sealed roads, and they just seem to be going nowhere, just in circles. And they're normally about 150 k's on average. And so you go like a Wacker, Clinton Belclutha, then you go to different areas. You see that was the trading loops before the supermarkets started. So just look at your local area and see where your loop was, where the little links were. And for us, Raised Bush has got a bridge across the river, and that town actually links west and south, and like this, there's like a trefoil.
Yeah.
And so Raised Bush is likely will be the hub of this half of Southland, and maybe Gore's the other, I don't know, somewhere like that, the other half, yeah. And so I think that's really important, because that's how they traded before there were cars even. And so you could have a pack horse and go from town to town and
so it's an evolution of that, really, using technology to assist with it. And so what I loved so much about this idea, this online farmers market idea, is it's totally scalable. So you've created this concept and you've got the software to make it happen. This can happen anywhere in New Zealand.
Yep.
Right?
And even in a suburb in a town. So you could have your suburb could be your hub. So you could have an open network platform that you use for your suburb, and you go to a little empty suburb, several shopping centre shop and meet there, and then you're trading with your own people, meeting your own people, and who's got food in your area if there's a disaster, who's got potatoes or who can make bread and that kind of thing.
And how did you fundraise for that? Because you fundraised for the electric van, is that right? If I remember.
Yeah, so we applied for Community Trust for half of electric van, and we applied to Electricity Conservation Authority for the other half of Wellington, but we were not accepted twice by them because we were not value for money, too small a town, and so our economic development agent made it show value for money, and then they said not unique enough. We didn't get it again, so I asked Community Trust if we could keep the funding and crowdfund, and so we did. And so we crowdfunded, and by that time, a better van had come up. So it might have been fortuitous that we didn't get the first one, and we don't need to have charging stations around our 165k loop, and so, but you don't need an electric van if you're rural. If you're in a town of 4,000 people, you've got enough. So every 4,000 people could have a loop.
That's brilliant.
Mm.
I think we might go into the Q&A soon. So if you do have any questions for Robyn, please pop them into the chat. And I'll have a look through now and see if there's any questions there we can answer. I've got one here I'm looking at from Chloe, and she's saying, have you looked into sourcing local access or local excess rather than growers per se? What would you suggest around that?
Like like supermarket excess, she means, or
Could be.
Yeah, that's fine too. Yeah. So our sort of focus has been organic and local. So supermarket excess might be from anywhere in the world. That's all. That's the only reason why we don't do it personally. But there's lots of is it Kiwi Harvest that do that a lot? There's a group in most cities now that go and get the waste in the supermarkets and give them to charities to share out, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just going to read through some of the comments here. I've got Philippa. I run a hybrid organic shop co-op on Waiheke Island, where the volunteers pay cost price, but the general public just use it as a shop. The co-op came out of the fact that the shop doesn't make enough money to pay staff, but it has been worth it to keep the community organic shop up and running. The main issue for us here is the commercial rent is really high.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it, you talked earlier about, finding a cafe or a new cafe that's just opened, finding a space where it would have some sort of mutual benefit. If you're bringing people into the cafe or if you're bringing people into a space, and it may not always work in some cities, but in smaller towns, it could possibly work.
Yeah, it's very symbiotic if you do have a co-op with volunteers helping. So, for example, our environment centre's open 7 days a week, 42 hours, because the food co-op is in there as well. And if it wasn't for the food co-op being there, that'll be open probably 20 hours a week. And so they win having all those extra people come in, and we're serving, and helping them with their gardening and other things as well. And so I think that's a really good way to go. Or a co-op, how you might have a craft people and a food co-op and some artists, or I don't know, just to get a little cluster of people to share the rent.
And ask your local council, like, is there a community space that could be used? Is there a part of the library, or is there another community hall that could be used, or a church hall even? I love your organic co-op in Riverton because people obviously come in just to look at and buy food, but there's so many amazing resources in there as well in terms of like books and ideas and just people to chat to. It's always a really welcoming space.
And it's a thing, like if you have different things, people might come in just to buy crafts or plants or some seeds, but then they see other things, and so that's why it's quite good to have 3 or 4 things in your building. And somebody buys a painting, somebody wants to buy some of that bread, and the bread person wants to buy a painting, so it works out good.
Paula's saying there is one here, but running through a shop called Amor, which is actually retail and brings in all the products from suppliers. The price you pay then includes a percentage of rent, wages, etc. So not really a co-op. Okay. Bronnie's asking or saying, as Robyn says, it's also about the confidence and commitment of starting something long term, plus all of the other choices in the poll. Go has closed down now. There is a food group in Go, but it has other locations. They are putting a local food bank together with fruit and vegetables, though I'm not sure where they're sourcing everything. but it won't be organic. Not sure if it's spray-free or not. Okay. And Bonnie's asking, do you need to have a hawker's license to run the shop, or what? You mentioned this earlier. You just need to be registered with MPI.
Yeah, so there's different levels of MPI, and so the basic one, if you're not selling hot food or processing or making stuff, it's quite not very expensive, and I think it's different for each council. So I think someone else, not you, who's wants to start off, get someone random to go and ask the council about how to start one, and get all the information about how you can do the right thing without having to be too involved, and then you start it. So don't go and ask, because then they'll say, "How are you going with your food co-op, Robyn?" So get someone to scout out for you that's sort of not quite related, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. We've got a comment here. I've helped organise some non-retail co-ops before, and I'm working on some software that supports a local pop-up food co-op model, so no rent or wages. So that's really interesting. So please do share that in future, and we can maybe spread the word on that one, Ira.
Definitely not having rent and wages, if you can get around that. So that's really important. It makes it all the difference.
She's also asking, what do you find is the hardest part of running a co-op?
Keeping everyone happy. There's always someone who's got something that they think is really important, and there's the person who says there could be some dust somewhere, or someone else says we haven't got enough of this, and it's just that you have to be like a mother. You look after all your children and all their needs, but you can't actually fuss over just one of them. So you have to say, radio, it's actually clean enough. If you worry about that, you can help clean it. Or we can't, if you have to buy more of this, you want us to get more regularly. We can't, if you don't, all that kind of stuff. You have to deal with issues that you have. And I'm a part-time teacher, so I'm used to looking after a whole class of teenagers. It's not as bad as that. But you do have little things come up, and you've got to have someone who's a person who's got thick enough skin to, talk to that customer, talk to that volunteer, or, there could be issues as one of the volunteers, for example, it's got dirty clothes and they're selling food, and so there's all little things come up, but they're all little in the big picture. The big picture to keep in mind is what you're actually doing is for the food, you know what I mean? So don't get lost in the detail, I'd say.
Katrina's got a good idea in the chat. She's saying, I wonder if there's a way universities could support it for their students. A student campus will be the same as a town in terms of population. That would be a great thing to do through a students' union, perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
But again, I think it would be really good to have some online resources that people can kind of access. Now, I know you have something, but I'm wondering whether there might be something else online. So maybe we could explore and look at that a bit later. So Robyn, I think we've finished off with the chat now, and I just wanted to ask you if you could summarize or 3 things that you want people to take away with you today, and in terms of thinking about starting a co-op in your local area. What would those 3 things be?
I think be brave and give it a go. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world for a start. And start off small and grow. Don't try and do everything. We started just with a box of oranges, and then bio grains, and then summer fruit, and I think that was really helped us. So if you think you have to have everything like an established food co-op is, it's going to be too much money and too difficult and too stressful. Just start off really slow, and find local first. I reckon look at what you got locally is really good. I know there's a lot you can get from Ceres and Chantel's, but there's also people in your province probably making those sort of things as well. They might be certified organic, but they probably are of the same similar quality, but just not registered. It's very expensive to get the certification for small growers. So if you know them with the good ethics, they're probably just as good.
So find your people,
Yep.
find the local products, and start small.
Yep.
Fantastic. Robyn, thank you so much for your time and your energy today. I really appreciate you coming along and sharing this wealth of knowledge that you have. I want to thank everybody for coming along this morning. We've got over 50 people in the audience, and then we have over 150 people sign up. So if thinking about all those people watching this webinar afterwards, and all those people going off into their communities and spreading that ripple effect, starting their local food co-ops, eating more organic food more affordably, then we're going to be healthier. It's going to be better for the environment. There's so many pros that, we just need to kind of make it happen. So be confident, find your people, find your food, and start small. I want to encourage everybody to sign up for our last Organic Week webinar, which is on Monday at 6 o'clock with Katrina Wolf, who I know is in the audience. Hi, Katrina. We've got the art of composting at 6 o'clock, and I will send out the link in an email to you all tomorrow for that one. So hopefully we'll see you there. But otherwise, enjoy your Sunday. Have a great day, and thank you, Robyn.
Thank you very much.
And I'll hopefully see you soon.